Hello my friend, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the International English Language Testing System, but you know it as IELTS. It's the big elephant in the room. So some of you have been asking me, Chioma, how did you manage to pass the IELTS exam? What did you do? Are there any strategies or tips you can share with us to help us attempt and pass that exam? So I am coming through with the tea in this video. I am not only going to be telling you about it, I am going to show you one resource in particular that really helped me. By the way, I didn't do any special training, coaching, or attend any special classes. Everything I did was just practice in my house using Professor Google and it was all for free. My name is Chioma, by the way, for anyone who is stopping by here for the very first time. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Make yourself comfortable and let's get started. I have attempted the IELTS test 2 times. I'm just giving you a brief background. I have attempted that exam twice in my entire life. The first time it was related to securing enrollment, and that was shortly after we arrived here in Australia in 2015. I was going to be seeking enrollment into a school for my master's program the following year in 2016. And because I had heard so much horror stories about how many times on average it takes people to attempt the test before they pass it, I decided I was going to give myself a fair few months, okay, just in case I needed to retake the exam a few times. That was why I attempted the exam in 2015, 1 full year before I was ready to even start my master's program. Thankfully, it was a good attempt. It was a very good result. I was aiming for a 7 because I could see that most schools and for the courses that I was considering at that time were asking for IELTS test and they were all requiring a 7. So a 7 overall and nothing less than 7 in each of the bands. So that was what I was gunning for when I attempted the test the first time. So the first time I came in at an 8.0. I had a 7.5 in listening, 8 in reading, 7.5 in writing, and 8 in speaking. So it was a good result. However, can you believe that I ended up not using that test result? Because by the time I enrolled in the school that I eventually enrolled in for my Master of Social Work program, they didn't even require an English test result from me because they could see that I was coming from a country where I received all my education in English and all of my transcripts and my previous certificates were written in English, right? So I ended up not having to use that IELTS test in the first place. However, in 2018, which was when I finished my course, I was getting ready to apply for my skills assessment and subsequently the 190 visa for permanent residency. And I had to take that test a second time because the first one had expired. I don't know if it is still the case today, but IELTS tests usually have a validity period of 3 years. Again, I don't know if that has changed. The second time around, I was aiming for a higher score. Okay, it was just a personal decision to aim even higher because I wanted to obviously increase my points towards my skilled migration and I wanted to get the highest points for the English requirement. So I was aiming for something higher than what I got before. My overall score from before was fine. It was an 8 and I needed to maintain that or go higher. But for each of my bands, I could not get anything less than an 8 to be able to gain maximum points in the English language requirements for permanent residency. And when I took the test the second time, I came in at 8.5 overall. And what I had in my bands were 8.0, 8.0, 8.0, and 9. So it was, again, it was a hit. The first time around, I thought, okay, I've never taken this test before. I don't know what it is like, but I have heard so many bad stories about people having to take that test multiple times before they eventually pass. And so when I went in the first time, I was thinking that was going to be my experience as well. And so I didn't want to put myself under any kind of pressure. I just wanted to get familiar with the test. I wanted to have an experience of the test and then come out of that experience with some feedback to myself on how to actually improve and what kind of things I could do to improve my second attempt. So it was a huge shock, like a good surprise at the end of the day, that I passed the test the first time. But the second time around, I was very conscious of what I needed that test to do for me. I wanted to get really high scores in the English language requirements, so I was aiming for something higher, and I decided I was going to be a bit more organized in my approach to the test. So I decided to do some practice. From the first experience, the feedback I had for myself was that I struggled a little bit with time, so I needed to be more time conscious and manage my time better so that I finish my tasks on time. And this time deficiency, I would say, was highlighted more in my reading task. I found that it was such a struggle for me. Yes, I got an 8.0 the first time in my reading, but I knew that I may not get as lucky the second time if I had the same experience with time as I did in the first round. So I really wanted to work on my reading. I also wanted to work on my listening, because the first time around, I remember the experience of missing out on a detail when the recording was playing. And by the time I realized that the recording was not stopping and there was not going to be a repeat, I had missed a few other details. And I feel like in listening in particular, not being able to have a good strategy cost me a few extra points in my listening. So the second time around, I also wanted to fix that. I wanted to have some kind of strategy around my listening. So with all of that in mind, what did I do? Have you taken a moment to hit the like button on this video? Please, please, please. That is one of the best ways to support me here. So if you haven't already liked this video, just take a moment right here, hit the like button. And if you choose to subscribe as well while you're down there, it only takes a few seconds. All right. So thank you so very much. Let's continue. So what did I do? What I did, quite honestly, was I went into Google and I just searched for free online IELTS practice tests. That was it. So I saw a lot of different sites and I used a lot of different sites, but I found this particular site and I am going to show you the site. By the way, I am also going to leave a link to this website in the comment section. I will pin that comment so that anyone coming into this video can see it. The website I am talking about is the IELTSonlinetest.com website. And what I particularly love about this website, number one, is the fact that there are tons and tons of past IELTS tests on there. So these are actual IELTS tests that have been administered previously. And this website just gathers all of them and compiles them into different volumes. And when you go on there, you would see tests for the academic test and the general test as well, depending on what you're after. So let me show you what this website looks like. When you come into the website, obviously there's all these things here. So take your time and just get familiar with the layout of the website. So one thing that I can see that is an addition, which I did not encounter when I used this site all those years ago, is this section right here, which actually offers live sessions with experts. So experts in the different skill areas of the IELTS test, for speaking, for writing, and even for vocabulary. And I can see that these live sessions are completely free, so you can join them very free, and they have dates of the upcoming sessions. I feel this is really great. I didn't have this back then, but it was fine. I still found it to be a really great site. And then scrolling past that, you will come into another section that has a compilation of the latest IELTS test releases. This is fantastic. So you might want to start from here, or maybe you want to go into the menu and access tests from even further before. It's up to you. Another thing I really love about this website is that some of the tests are actually administered in exam-like conditions. So you will be timed and you will also be scored when you're done with your test. So when you start taking the test here, it's a practice test, you will see a timer below the screen. Let me actually click on one of the tests so that you see what I am talking about while I am talking about it. So here I have clicked on one of those mock tests and I can see that there are 6 modules in this particular compilation. And for each module, you have a listening test, a reading test, a writing test, and a speaking test. So I'm just going to click on the reading test. So here I am in the reading passage, and I have a pop-up window saying you need to log in. So just create an account. Again, it is free. And if you've got a Google account, then just use your Google account to access the website and to access the test. Down here at the bottom of the screen is the timer. Once you begin taking the test, the timer will start ticking down. And as soon as the time gets to 0, you will be locked out of the test. You can't continue. And then your total scores will be calculated and you will see it. Now for my reading, remember I said that I struggled a little bit with my reading. After attempting a few of these practice tests, I stumbled upon a strategy which became a game changer for me. Okay, in terms of beating the time and still feeling confident about my work. So I found that the traditional approach of starting off by reading the passage before attempting the questions was not doing me any favors. So what I started doing instead was going straight into the questions instead of reading the passage. I wasn't reading the passage at all. I just went straight into the questions, because what I realized was the questions follow the sequence of the passage. Okay, as you walk your way down the questions, you're also going to be finding the answers in the same sequence in the passage. So IELTS passages are usually structured in paragraphs, and sometimes those paragraphs are labeled. And as I said, try it out for yourself. I hope things have not changed, but try it out for yourself. You would see that answers are appearing in the same sequence as you go through the questions. So that was the game changer for me. And then moving on to the listening test, as I said, it was one of my areas of struggle in my previous attempt as well. With the listening test, I think the biggest thing, at least for me, was about training my mind. So it's more of a psychological strategy than it is a practical strategy. Okay, all right. So it was about training my mind to stay focused on the recording. That recording, as I mentioned previously, will not be played a second time. So you want to make sure that whatever happens, regardless of what happens, even if the roof is falling down on that day, like the earth is crashing, do not let anything take your attention away from the recording. Because once you miss one detail, it is gone. But while you're there scrambling to remember that one detail, the recording keeps going. It's not stopping. It's not going to be played again. And you potentially might miss out on other details to help you fill out your answers. So please don't do that. Again, this is something that will take, several rounds of practice for you to get under control. So give yourself time and practice, practice, and practice. And just on that note as well, generally speaking, I feel like one of the major things that actually stop people from doing their best in IELTS is more psychological than practical. Okay, there's already a very notorious reputation that the IELTS and even all the other standardized English tests have acquired, because most people attempting this English test are doing so for a significant decision they are making in their lives. It will usually be for something related to migrating to another country or starting international education in another country. It impacts on your psyche going into that test. You're already feeling like there's a very big chance I am going to fail the test. So generally speaking, work on the conditioning of your mind before you go into the IELTS test. Speaking for myself, I would say that I found that the test is really not as daunting as its reputation makes it look. Going into the writing tasks, what I have found that actually helps with writing is reading. So the more you read, the better you will write. And again, this might be a very general advice around how to improve your writing, but that has certainly been what has helped me. I've always loved to read, and I feel like writing has never really been something that I struggle with. However, for IELTS, I did read a little bit online about some of the things that examiners are looking for when they grade your writing tasks in IELTS. And some of the things that I took out of those resources was, Number one, try to make your sentences as varied and as interesting as possible. So what I mean by this is, as much as possible, don't just write basic structured sentences. Try to make your sentences more complex in how you structure your tenses, in the kind of words you use synonyms, use antonyms. Find a variety of different ways to express the same idea. Use linking words a lot, like however, in addition to, with regards to, or in respect of, things like that, instead of just saying and all the time, or but all the time. For the speaking component of that exam, one thing that I want to say here, which you shouldn't worry so much about, is your technical know-how of the topic you've been asked to speak on. Chances are they might give you a topic to speak on that you really know nothing about it, technically speaking, but just remember that this is about the use of the English language. It's not about your technical know-how in that area. Okay, you do not need to know the professional jargon that is used in whatever topic you've been asked to speak on. I remember that in one of my tests, I was asked to speak on starting a business. I was sitting across from an Australian examiner. I was very new in the country, less than 3 months old in the country, and someone was saying for me to talk about how to start a business. So obviously I didn't know the technical terms to use on how to start a business in the context of Australia. And for a moment there, I worried a little bit, but then I quickly came back to the realization that this was about testing my use of the English language. It wasn't about testing my business acumen. So as soon as I came into that realization, I relaxed and I started talking rubbish. Technically speaking, I was talking a lot of rubbish. It certainly didn't make sense business-wise, but I was paying attention to my fluency. I was paying attention to how I was constructing my words, the kind of words I was using, and just making sure that the examiner sitting across from me understood what I was saying and that I was actually making sense. Simple, okay? So go in there and slay your exams. And just on that note, people, have you recently sat any of the English tests? It doesn't have to be IELTS, any of the English tests, or are you preparing to write an English test? Please leave your comments in the comment section. I would love to read from you, and if there are any specific questions you have regarding the IELTS, I will try my best to think of strategies that I have used, but generally speaking, I didn't do any special coaching or classes or training. So this is the little I can remember from when I wrote the exam, and I hope this video has been helpful. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up on your way out, and for all of you who have ended up subscribing, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye-bye.